Ribal Al Assad. We've mentioned the name Al Assad already today. It's the same name. Yeah. Ribal Al Assad is, however, a different kind of character from the Assad. Bashar al Assad we are more familiar with from the headlines in recent weeks and months. He is one of the organizations he's responsible for and he's affiliated with is the Organization for Democracy and Freedom in Syria. He's also the founder and chairman of the Iman Foundation, which is, those two organizations pretty much dovetail, I think it's fair in saying. The Iman organization is more responsible directly for religious matters. Okay. Okay, Ribal, let's sit down and let's talk, yeah? We're here to talk about freedom of expression, freedom of speech. We'll specifically be talking now, obviously, about Syria. But let's talk about you, first of all, to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah? Some people will know who you are, other people won't. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about who you are.
Yes, actually, thank you very much, Mark, for inviting me. It's always a great pleasure to be at the ICD and amongst so many distinguished guests. I'm Bashar al-Assad's first cousin, and I was exiled from Syria at the age of 9 years old with my family. Of course, my father was vice president at the time, and he had disagreements with his brother, President Assad, which is Bashar's father. I lived since 9 years old in France. I moved from France to the US, to Spain, to the UK, and I got to see the realities about how the real word is, not the word that we were having. Even as a young child, I had many difficulties. I remember in Syria, I didn't have a normal childhood because, as you know, we had problems with the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood in Syria during the 70s and 80s. So at one incident, we had a truck who tried to drive into our home, and it got stopped before it was able to to set up the explosion, and it was very difficult. Even going to school, as I remember going to school, heavily guarded. We couldn't go to friends' birthdays or be at any social event. So it was a very nice experience, living abroad, seeing how democracy works, how people live abroad, and it encouraged me actually to start working towards democracy, start working for my country, for free media, freedom of expression, all of that. We then started the first Arab satellite news TV channel in the Middle East to promote democracy and freedom, and its headquarters is in London. Its name is Arab News Network. Unfortunately, in '97, I was studying in Boston. I came back for Christmas and New Year's holidays to visit my family, my father came back to Syria after his mother passed away, but he was again under kind of a house arrest in Latakia. And while I was there, my father got dismissed and he was allowed to leave the country as they were paving the way for President Bashar to come to power. So my father left. I had to stay there, take care of our family's charity, which were giving food and salaries to nearly 10,000 families every month. And in '99, I traveled again to see my family in Spain. And 1 week after I arrived in Spain, our house got bombed. The army attacked our house in Latakia, leaving a lot of casualties. 200 people were arrested at that time, put in jail for 4 years. And unfortunately, at the time, the media, again, I blame a lot of things on the media, on the Western media too, who was trying to help Bashar al-Assad's ascendancy to power. So they said they took the regime side of the facts. They said that the regime had attacked an illegal port belonging to us, which was complete. And at the time, there wasn't any YouTube, so there wasn't any possibility to put pictures or videos of the house that got bombed. And thanks to YouTube, now you could see the house. It wasn't an illegal port; it was a house, and you see how it was bombed and in Latakia. Again, in 2000, when my uncle passed away and Bashar, they changed the constitution for Bashar al Assad in 45 minutes, we were the only one who came out and said, this is a travesty, you should not do that, you know, this is unconstitutional and it's going to lead to disaster. Not because we have anything against Bashar, it's just because Bashar was a young man in 94, he was studying in London, it was his first year in London, and at that time the whole Western media came out and said Bashar is a British educated, he's westernized and all of that. And he had not anyone who spends a year studying abroad means that he becomes a Western educated. You need a lot more than that. But as you know, the media really propped him up and tried to make of him like the new man who's going to change Syria and move it forward. And we were criticized, of course, for because of being the only voice who said it is not normal and this should not be accepted. But again, as you all know, Prime Minister Blair, Madeleine Albright, King of Saudi Arabia, they all went to Syria. President Chirac, who received him even before he became president, and it was against all protocol. They all went there. Even King Abdullah of Saudi Arabia, who was crown prince at the time, he came out and said, I left Syria in safe hands. So we were, okay, then it's what the international community wants. Then we have to, you know, in a way, shut up and see what's going to happen. And in 2003, as you know, first he tried, you know, the Damascus Spring in 2001, allowing people freedom of expression, kind of, you know, talking about democracies in salons in people's homes. But a few months after that, he had to stop it. And he had to start putting those people that they allowed to speak about democracy, to put them in jail. People don't understand why. That shows you the power that Bashar has, which a lot of people don't know. He has no power in Syria. He's really a puppet in a way. People around him, the security services, in the security apparatus, those people who had interest under his father are the same people who brought him to power. And they only brought him to power because he's a weak person and he could keep their interest in place. So as soon as he started allowing those the people talking about you know, democracy and change towards democracy, the secret services came to him and told him, you know, the head of secret services, that what you're doing is very dangerous. People in those, you know, when they're sitting and talking about democracy, they're not criticizing you, but they're criticizing the previous regime. And the previous regime is your father. And you're the only legitimacy that you have, it's because you're the son of your father. And so this worried him a lot, and they said that if this is going to be, you're going to have to pay the price for it. So they arrested all those people again. And in 2003, as you know, after the Iraq war and the Americans invaded Iraq, Bashar got very scared because they knew that they're going to be next. You know, after Saddam Hussein was toppled, it was signed that dictatorship is not anymore allowed in the area, and that we're going to move towards democratic change. So he got very worried, so he started helping all the Islamists in Syria. I give you an example. In the 90s, for example, you only had 10 to 15% of women who were wearing the veil or the burqa or chador. Now you have 80% of women in Syria who wear the veil and the burqa. He helped all these Islamic forces. They started creating all those extremist groups that they would send to fight in Iraq. They would send to Lebanon, like Fatah al-Islam, for example. They sent to Nahr al-Bared to use as an excuse to reinvade Lebanon at the time. Of course, it didn't work, but the whole Nahr al-Bared got destroyed. Over 35,000 people, you know, had to move to another area, to another refugee camp. And it was, for him, it was a message to the West. It's either you deal with us, we're a secular regime, or you would have to deal with those Islamists. And unfortunately, this is what we've seen today. The same thing that he has created is turning against him and against his regime. And in 2009, our TV channel started getting jammed by the Syrian regime, and there was anything to do about it. There are no laws, actually, we have 40 people that were going to lose their jobs in the United Kingdom. It's a British company. We have contracts with other British companies and European countries. And there was nothing that the UK or any other countries could help us with. So for 3 months, we couldn't go back on air. Something that we had built since 1997 was going to close down. It was really horrible. So I said that we should not stop. The Syrian regime could not stop us, and was going to start. I set up the Organization for Democracy and Freedom in Syria, to shed a light on really what is happening in the country, to campaign for democracy and freedom, to go and meet parliamentarians and decision makers all over Europe and the UK. And it was very sad. It was very difficult because at the time I was going to British Parliament and other places, and everybody was saying, yeah, Syria, not even in 1,000 years, democracy, what are you talking about? It was really, really difficult. Even some people who were parliamentarians but who were close, they used to go and come to Syria often. They weren't even that much interested into meeting with us. And then, this is what we all see what happened in Tunisia. People can't take it anymore. It started with Bouazizi, who set himself on fire. And of course, this has led to, the people rising up in Egypt, in Libya, in Yemen, in Syria, in Bahrain. And people are not understanding that it's just people in the Middle East cannot take it anymore. They should have understood that a long time ago when the Berlin Wall fell. They should have understood that when the Soviet Union collapsed, that's it. The Western world or the United States, they do not need those dictators anymore. Because the war between the Soviet Union actually and the Cold War was about battles of ideas. And one idea has triumphed over the other, and democracy will have sooner or later to take over this area. And so we are in other countries. It has not succeeded. There was kind of not that much bloodshed as we have in Syria today. But don't be mistaken. The trouble is not over, neither in Egypt or Libya or other places. I think things are going to take a while until things will settle down. But in Syria, it's going to be, unfortunately, it's going to be a disaster. The problem with Syria that people are not understanding today, it's not just Syria alone. The problem with Syria is its relationship with Iran. Iran has a nuclear program, which it's a whole risk. It's a huge risk for actually the whole area. Iran has, it's an imperialist country who has dream of taking control over the Middle East, and is using the Shia Arabs. Other countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the rest have tried for the past years to get Bashar away from that axis. They've tried. Qatar was Bashar's best friend. Turkey became Bashar's best friend too. They tried to woo him out of this alliance, but unfortunately they didn't succeed, and they took advantage of what's happening of this Arab Spring to hijack, in a way, the uprising in Syria. So you have Turkey, Saudi, and Qatar have decided to start a sectarian war, in a way, in the region, sectarian conflict, to be more precise. And you started having TV channels, for example, coming out of Saudi Arabia. One is based in Riyadh and the other one in Egypt, calling, you have this religious man who go, one is Safa and the other one is Wisal, calling on inciting violence against Alawites and Shias. And this is it's not helpful at all, And the same thing, you start having, for example, the Chief Justice of Saudi Arabia's Supreme Council, who came out and said, I call on jihad against the Alawites in Syria, even if 2/3 of the Syrian population die. This is again horrible. And so today we find ourselves really like between two fires, between the Syrian regime, who's killing those people in Syria, who rose up in the beginning, who rose up all on one hand, Alawites, Christians, Sunnis. They were all together chanting peaceful, 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 and 111, the Syrian people, they are one. But unfortunately, when it got hijacked, now we have also armed people inside Syria. As head of national intelligence in the US, Mr. Clapper, said that Al-Qaeda unfortunately has infiltrated this opposition. So we are, we are lost between these two fires.
That was a long answer.
Just to give a bit
I asked
of
you to
overview
describe
about
your background a little bit. And one of the points you made was you talked about, there are 2 points that we really must talk about, but one was that you talked about the legitimacy of Bashar al-Assad being derived from his father, the previous dictator in Syria, Hafez. And there are a lot of people, and you know this, who will look at you and they will say that your legitimacy as a voice for freedom of expression and democracy in Syria, your legitimacy is compromised precisely by your father. And I've got a quote here. Your father has been described as possibly the most hated of all Syrians, including those in the regime. You know what I'm talking about, because you've had this discussion very often in the past. Your father is reviled, and for many in the Syrian opposition, you know that you too are reviled. That makes your mission that you see yourself as being on extremely difficult.
It's true, because unfortunately, when my father was in Syria, what a lot of people don't know is that my father started the first Arabic newspaper that called on for democracy in the Middle East. It was in 1967. The name was Al Fursan magazine. He was always arguing with his brother about. My father did the coup against the former president, Amin al-Hafez, and when he brought President Hafez al-Assad to power, they had agreed that to move towards democracy, that they did a coup against a dictator who was also a Ba'athist member, but it was to move towards democracy. President Assad had agreed, he said he would move towards democracy as soon as they returned the Golan Heights that's occupied by Israel. Unfortunately, after, that was in 1970. In 1973, the war happened, between the Arabs and Israel. And President Sadat came he called my father in Syria, and he told him that the Americans are offering to return the Sinai and the Golan Heights in exchange for peace and economic help. So my father told President Sadat, it's a great idea, why don't you come to Syria and we go discuss it with President Assad. So President Sadat came, they went together to meet President Assad, and President Assad replied that what has been taken by force could only be taken by force. Then my father knew really that President Assad did not want, he didn't care really much about returning the Golan Heights. What he cared about, he really wanted, it was an excuse to stay as a dictator, to run the country as a dictator. And this is when they started shifting in Syria. What a lot of people, again, don't know, that my father was the first man who introduced women into the Arab armies, into any Arab armies. We had thousands of women at that time who came into the Syrian army. At the time, I think in 1983, the first woman helicopter pilot woman in the world was, in the US was in 1983. While in 84, my father had nearly 50 women who went to, training on the Gazelle helicopters in Paris.
With all due respect, can I just interrupt again? Because it does sound a little bit like the patriarchal old politics that have been such a problem for Syria, family clans.
It's not really family, this is what I'm trying to explain.
Too much power,
not really
having too much economic influence, and that has very little to do with the modern concept of democracy and freedom of expression.
What I'm trying to say, in the country, he was very, advanced for his time. He wanted Syria to move forward very quickly. He had created the Association for Highly Educated People. It had over 30,000 members. Even inside the Ba'ath Party, my father was winning. Inside the Ba'ath Party, he had more support than the president. What a lot of people don't know is that the Ba'ath Party today is illegitimate. A lot of people don't even ask the question why. Because in the Ba'ath Party's last National Congress, which is the highest authority in the Ba'ath Party, it happened in 1980. And after that, there was never, the National Congress never met again. Why was it the last time it happened in 1980? Because everybody voted for my father instead of against the president, and he was named president of the higher court of the Ba'ath Party. And that was the last time they'd ever met. And in 1985, it was the last time that the regional Congress met. Why again? Because again, most people were supporters of my father. And from 1985 until 2000, there was no meetings. So any party that doesn't have meetings every 4 years, it's considered illegitimate. They only had to reconvene the meeting in 2000 when President Assad died to name Bashar al-Assad as head of the party, because in the constitution you have to be head of the Ba'ath party to be able to become president of Syria. But again, when my father left, when there was a conflict in 1984, when the conflict came down between my father and my uncle, my father finally left Syria. He was exiled, and the regime started right away to have a dialogue with the Muslim Brotherhood. And they decided, both of them, unfortunately, to blame everything that happened in Syria on my father. Corruption, what happened in Hama in 1982. And my father came out, lately. It's very sad because my father never wanted to speak about it in the past. My father has a different view, as he was raised in a completely different environment, as I'm sure some of you are from countries who have the same ideas. You don't speak against your brother, you don't speak against your father, you don't speak against your... that's just his mentality. He said, whatever he used to tell us when we were young, we said, well, why do we have to suffer so much? Why do we have all these media writing against us? Even though we won, what a lot of people don't know, that we won over 30 cases against newspapers in France, but he never came out to tell the truth. And I told you, as when you're a young child at school, it's very difficult to, when the other kids call you, you're the son of this, you're the son of that. And it was very important for us for him to come out and speak, but he would always say, it's not up to me. He's my older brother. He could do whatever he wants to me. I will never talk badly about him. Unfortunately, he had to come out a few months ago at the Paris conference, and he said exactly what happened in 1982, that he never took part of the 1982, what happened in the city of Hama, what a lot of people blame him for.
I mean, it is a fact that you could speak to very many people. I mean, I haven't been to Syria myself, but I have spoken to lots of people who have great expertise on this matter. And they say that practically nobody in Syria these days doesn't believe that your father was involved in the Hama massacre in 1982. Yeah, I mean, we can talk about this.
No, but of course, when you have a regime, a Syrian regime coming, and all their effort is to put, to put all their effort into discrediting you and giving you a bad publicity, what could you,
But you've mentioned the regime and you've mentioned the Muslim Brotherhood. But
yes.
the problem for you with your democratic mission, your mission for freedom of expression, it goes much further, because as far as I can tell, and I've spoken to members of the Syrian National Council, quite a few, when I say to them, I'm going to meet Ribal Al Assad, they say, there's a problem there.
Of course
they doubt your credentials.
But I doubt theirs too. I mean, they're Islamic. They're 80% Islamists. The Syrian National Council is 80%. And one of the members came out last week in Reuters, spoke to Reuters, and he said, unfortunately, the SNC is overwhelmingly Islamist. Yes, we do have a problem with Islamists. I personally do have a problem with Islamists. As I told you, I had a very bad childhood with the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood in Syria are not the same as the ones in Egypt. They used violence. They killed people. In Syria, they killed 400 cadets at the Aleppo school for being Alawites. They used to hang girls for under bridges just because they weren't wearing the veil. They bombed in Azbakiya in Damascus, a girls' school, killing 200 people. I mean, they were terrible. Of course, I have a problem with them, and they have a problem with us. They consider us infidels because I'm an Alawite.
And the result of all this is that you have a hugely divided country.
It is hugely divided.
Where's the future in the situation now?
It's very difficult. I always say, if people don't put their grudges aside, if they don't, I always say we cannot forget about our past, because the past will always teach us, not to repeat the same mistakes in the future. But we have to put our grudges aside. We have to work together. I mean, to build a country, if we want to build a country, the future of Syria, it cannot be built on grudges and hatred. We have to put that on side. We have to work together. We have to be able to stop this hatred, stop this violence, stop inciting on each other, stop having fatwas against minorities. Because, as you know, Syria is made up of 45. What people don't know, a lot of people, you hear, 80% is the majority of Syria. This is not true. You have 20% Alawite, or people tell you today 10 or 12%. When were this, this polls or whatever, this census surveys done? In the 50s? When people an Alawite didn't even dare to say that I'm an Alawite, or they didn't even go register their people. When a lot of people were born, they didn't even have papers. But today they are nearly 20% Alawite, another 15 to 17% Christians, 20% Kurds. So this is, then you have the Druze, the Shias, the Ismailis, the Turkmen, the Circassian, and that's a lot of people. That's what I say, when you have 45% of minorities in Syria who are very worried about having Islamists coming to power. Of course they want to get rid of a dictatorship, but certainly not to have theocracy. We have seen what happened in Iran 30 years ago, and we don't want to see that same scenario repeated in Syria, because that would be a disaster for these people. And already people now started talking in Syria about division, about dividing.
But we're here today to talk about cultural diplomacy and building bridges.
Exactly.
How, if any way, is that possible in this very divided country where
we
people
try to have
these
dialogue.
profound grudges?
You have to have dialogue, and this is why I created my other organization, Iman, which is for interfaith and intrafaith dialogue, because you cannot move towards democracy if you don't have interfaith and intrafaith, between Muslims themselves, which is a huge problem today in the Middle East. You cannot continue on calling. The problem is that when people call you an infidel, it's very difficult to sit with someone who thinks that you're an infidel, because in Islam it's different than Christianity. In Islam, if you're an infidel, that means they have to kill you. And it's very difficult. Sooner or later, an infidel have to die, and it's something that they believe in. It comes from their Sheikh Ibn Taymiyyah, who is their highest, in history, he's their highest authority, who says that all minorities, including Christians, Alawites, Druze, that those people are infidels, and that you have to commit jihad against them to fulfill your Islam so that you'll be able to go to paradise. Unfortunately, that's a reality. So that today, if we want to have dialogue, they have to bring another fatwa saying that no, Alawites and Shias and Christians and all, they're all brothers, we're all brothers of the same country, we're all Syrians, and we have to live together.
And have you, in your efforts to create dialogue, have you had the opportunity to talk to the Muslim Brotherhood? Is that dialogue taking place between groups outside the Muslim Brotherhood?
Yes, even the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood,
itself?
yes, and indirectly, yes, through people, through my office in Lebanon. The SNC, they said, we don't have problem with Ribal, we don't have problem meeting with Ribal, but not the father. But the problem, I said, yes, but before meeting, actually, it's, of course they need me. They need me as they need an Alawite, they need an Assad to be with them, because it's very difficult. The army, has the officers, and a lot of people are from the Alawite and Christians and others. So they need to show that we have an Alawite, an Assad who's with us. But at the same time, it's not about using each other. It's either it has to be genuine dialogue, and this could only happen if they come out with a fatwa against their previous fatwas that came out in the 70s, which called on killing of all Alawites and all other minorities. Because that would be very difficult.
That's a very interesting comment that you've just made, though, because in the past you have said you see no real role in active politics in Syria in the future for yourself.
Yeah.
But you've just admitted that you could be, at least you could have a symbolic leadership role for your community.
No, I just want to be a bridge, not really. I said this is how they perceive me. It's not what I want. This is what they're trying to do. They're trying to get me to sit with them, to show, to play that card with the Alawites in Syria. But I'm not here to be used. I'm not interested in that even. I told you I'm interested, yes, to be a bridge. I'm interested in dialogue. I'm interested to move forward. I'm interested to have my country, become like Germany, like the UK, like all these countries where I've lived.
Talking of dialogue, should we open up the discussion and see what
please,
anybody else has to ask or say? Yeah. Anybody got a question, a comment? Sir.
Good morning. I'm Joe Mathewson from Northwestern University in Chicago. What's the significance of the weekend referendum, or is it just window dressing?
Yes, of course it is window dressing, because in the previous constitution, we had the constitution, it said that it forbids torture, it was for freedom of the media and freedom of demonstrating peacefully. All of these were in the previous constitution, but they were never respected. So how do we know that in this new constitution that they're going to respect that? And also, even in this new constitution that we have, one of the crazy things it says is like the president has to be a Muslim. Why does the president have to be a Muslim when you have 15 to 17% Christian in the country? How is that democratic? They tell you, because we have a lot of, 80% of the country is Muslims. We don't want to offend them. It doesn't matter. If you don't want to offend them, give the right to Christians even to to run for the presidency, and people will vote for them or they won't vote for them. But that's, you know, that's freedom, that's democracy. It's not you just take them out from the beginning and say Christian cannot become, you know, president. And other things like the, you know, for example, it was really tailored to fit. I mean, to fit them perfectly. One of the things that they came out with again, you know, in one of the article of the new constitution is that you know, all people who have dual citizenship could not run for presidency. I mean, it could work maybe for other countries, but you know, in Syria we have nearly 9 million people who live abroad, and they don't live abroad just because they you know, if Syria was a great country and it had freedom and democracy, people wouldn't be running away to live abroad. You know, a lot of them run away from the military service, which used to be 2 years and a half. So a lot of them left because they were, you know, for lack of freedom and of expression. A lot of them were followed by the secret services. A lot of them were harassed, tortured. So this is just a crazy thing to say, you know. And again, I don't think that you could have, I mean, a referendum while you're bombing, you know, cities in Syria while people are dying. I mean, who's going to come out, go to and vote for a referendum when, you know, when they're under fire, like in the city of Homs, for example. So this is, I think, it was just crazy. They think it's a first step. They think it's something that they could sell to the Russians and Chinese, which I don't think that they know much about democracy neither. But I think it was a complete farce, and yeah, I hope that things will change. I mean, even that constitution, I hope that it won't. It will be something that will be drafted in the near future by 2 parties and not just by 1 party.
Hello, Vuk Vukotic from Vilnius University. Chedwan, when you also mentioned how you want Syria to be like more like the Western countries, and one of the concepts mentioned with spread of freedom of expression and democracy is globalization. And I noticed also you see there's another tendency which is in the world generally, religion, which is, well, as we saw from the Arab Spring. So do you think one of the main problems with bringing more freedom of expression in your countries or generally in countries of Middle East, North Africa would be this religious awakening? And do you have any plans to, I don't know, oppose it in any way?
The sad thing again today is that, unfortunately, you know, when there was a Cold War, I think the Western countries were promoting democratic parties. They put a lot of efforts and money into promoting democratic parties. Today, unfortunately, the West doesn't have money. Is not interested, I think, anymore. I mean, they give very small things to set up a website or a magazine or something like that. But the problem is that the countries who are today giving all the money is Qatar and Saudi Arabia. And those countries, in their interest, of course, they're not going to go and help with the democratic parties. So who do they go and help? They go and help the Islamists. That's how we see, for example, how the revolution in Egypt, I mean, how it was hijacked again by the Muslim Brotherhood. Nobody thought, why did the Muslim Brotherhood get the first position? Of course, because they were supported by Qatar. And why did the Salafis get the second position? Because they were supported by Saudi Arabia. And other young people, girls, the democratic parties who were out there in Tahrir Square in the beginning, all those people got nothing. You know, they got nothing because nobody supports them. Even one of, I mean, a friend in a way, Najib Suarez, for example, who we met at different occasions, and he spoke. He said, he set up his own party, which, you know, he came out third, as you know, after the Muslim Brotherhood and Salafis, because of course he's the richest man in Egypt. But he said, I don't have as much money as Qatar and Saudi. So this is how you see how people today in the Middle East, money is playing a big problem. Yeah, I mean, it's playing a big role and making a big problem. And we've seen also again what happened in Libya, with the Qataris giving all this money and arms and facilitating even a lot of deals to get gas oil from Vitol and other company. So it shows you how the Islamists, with the help of those countries, yes, they're going to get support, of course. It's not because of the ideas and because people are pro-Islamist. No, not at all. It's just today there's an economic crisis. People in the Middle East are starving, and whoever comes with with a lot of money helps these people do a lot of social work. They're the ones who, like we've seen again in Gaza and Ramallah. Ramallah, the people were taking all the money. They were very extremely corrupt. Hamas came. They started doing a lot of social work. Of course, they won the elections there.
My question is more to Peter Graven. Assad said that Tony Blair went and congratulated Assad. So my question is, shouldn't Blair be implicated somehow in all of this? I mean, also, Blair also did lie to his own people about the lead up to the Iraq War. And he was basically a pawn of Bush. So to me, it seems that the West is just using democracy for its own purposes, and they're spreading it around like it's confetti and it's going out of style. So what do you have to say about this?
I'm not quite sure in what capacity you're asking me this question, either as the moderator of the event these few days, or as
I just think you're being a little bit too hard on Mr. Assad.
Or as a general observer. I mean, my answer to that would be, and I really want to play my cards a little bit close to my chest, is that I do think that one of the issues we're going to be talking about in the next couple of days is interventionism in general, and the pitfalls of interventionism. And that's what you're talking about. We're going to be talking about the pitfalls of interventionism, which is, in journalistic terms, is often called activism. And we're going to be talking about those two areas and about the pitfalls of those, and that's what you're referring to. Yeah? I'd like to just pass the question on, though, because I do think it is an extremely relevant question about the whole aspect of realpolitik and how you deal with an ongoing and emerging situation in a country like Syria. Because you suggested that the Syrian National Council is dominated by the Islamists.
Yes.
That's an interesting contention, given that many...
That's a complete disaster. But I'm sure, the problem behind it is that it was the Saudis and the Qataris who are pushing for them. And as you know, the problem again is because of, when Qatar promises to invest $100 billion in Europe this year, of course, I mean, they could, they could call the shots, unfortunately, if that's what they call realpolitik. When we have Bahrain, that's, when you have the Saudi army and the other, Gulf armies, GCC armies in Bahrain, crashing the demonstrators and nobody's saying a word about it, then you understand what's realpolitik, unfortunately. Why is the people in Bahrain being treated differently than the people in Syria? Why are the people not saying anything about those people in Bahrain? I was personally in Bahrain 2 weeks ago. I saw the tanks, the armored vehicles everywhere in the streets, machine guns. And the people in Bahrain, the uprising in Bahrain, they don't even have weapons. They have bottles of alcohol, cocktail Molotovs, whatever, but they don't have machine guns, they don't have guns. So this is unfortunate, but this is what's happening today. It's very sad, but this is what's happening.
It sounds as if you're saying what the West is doing now is what it's traditionally done, and that is try and back what it thinks will be the winner in this conflict. And now, as in at times in the past, it's got it wrong. That seems to be what you're saying, and I'm interested in the suggestion that the West completely got it wrong with Bashar al-Assad when he came to power. I mean, I remember reading all those editorials in The Economist and The New York Times. He's a reformer, he's going to try and change the country. And you said that was all a myth, and that West bought that. But at the same time, you said when he did try to reform, he was hampered by the army and the vested interests. Yeah. Was he someone who came to power in Syria genuinely believing that he could change the country? And number one. And number two, when he realized that he couldn't, was he simply falling back on what he deeply believed, which was that he wasn't really interested in change anyway, or did he realize that he couldn't beat the generals and he couldn't beat the authorities? I mean, what was his commitment to freedom of expression and freedom and democracy when he came to power?
Well, I honestly believe that that he wanted to change. He wanted to bring. Yes, but I mean, they got that right in a way. But what they didn't get right is that it's Syria. They know very well how Syria is governed. I mean, come on, they know very well who are the generals who control Syria. They know very well how the secret services is run in Syria. They know very well how the whole country is run by those corrupt people. So you cannot have someone of 34 years of age coming in and with very little experience, being able to put all those generals aside and moving towards reforms. This is where they got it wrong. So if Bashar wanted really to do reforms, he should have tried to call on national dialogue and have a national unity government before he starts that. But unfortunately, it's not that they got it wrong. I told you, I honestly believe, because even his wife, Asma, she's a woman. I mean, she's British. She's Syrian, but she's also British, and she's highly educated. She came to Syria and she tried to do a lot of even for charity, and she wasn't able to do any of her charity works. Why? Because every time that she would try to do something, again, there would reports from the secret services who would say, when she tried to do something for children who are, who have problems, children who physical problems. Yes, handicapped children, and unfortunately, even that, reports came from secret services. Oh, people will start cutting their legs off. You have children who would start to do this, start to do that. This is crazy. This is, because they knew very well this is another way towards reforms. It's maybe a small way, but it's another way towards reforms. And they stopped her. She tried to do many different things, and she was stopped. So.
Sorry, I'm still confused as to what your criticism is of the international community at that time. Because surely it made sense to publicly bolster Assad if he was seen as a possible agent of change. So I don't know, Blair going there and Hillary Clinton or whatever, that was surely absolutely the right thing to do. Now what you do beyond that to try and influence those entrenched interests, the army, the Alawite minority, whatever, who do have power, that's a separate thing.
Yes, but when the constitution of a country changes for someone in 45 minutes, that's already a bit, it's not something right. And second is that they had to, and as I told you before, Syria, geopolitically is different from other countries. It's very sensitive. The Syrian army was in Lebanon. They had problem with Iraq. They had problem with many of its neighbors, with Turkey, and so it was very. It was very naive of them to think that someone like Bashar al Assad could do something to change that. It was very naive of them to just back him just because he says, I'm a reformer. But at the end of the day, you have to see, is he able to do something or not? You'll back him if you see that he has ability. This is why a lot of times they came and say, oh, Bashar al Assad cannot keep a word, he's a liar. It's not that he's a liar. He really genuinely, when he talks to them, he promises things, but he can't deliver. Because at the end of the day, if he his father, when he used to promise things, he was able to deliver because he was a strong man. But Bashar cannot deliver anything. But at the same time, he's a president, so he cannot tell them, no, sorry, I cannot do that. So he has to give them a positive answer. But at the end, they would find out right away that he wasn't able to accomplish what he promised them.
Yeah, just briefly. Since we're talking about the revolution of media as a tool of freedom of expression, what media, what alternative media are you and your people and other oppositional camp members in Syria, in and outside Syria, actually using and how does it work, how is it funded, and is it having any impact at all?
To be very honest, other than the satellite news TV channels, that are there today, it's very difficult to, for example, say the internet has played a big role in Syria. And the internet has played a big role into showing to the outside world what's really happening inside Syria. But inside Syria, it has played very little role, because what people don't know is that it's one of the smallest penetration in the world. Syria has only 16% penetration rate, because even if you get internet access in Syria, you cannot get ADSL lines, the landline or a fast line. So you need like an hour just to open a page. And to get an ADSL line, it's very expensive. People cannot pay for it. Normal people cannot pay for it. And other than that, it's not even available. So it's very naive to say, yes, Facebook played a huge role, or Twitter played a huge role, whatever played a huge role. I don't think it played any role, actually, in demonstrations inside Syria. What it played, as I told you, is to bring those videos and posting them on Facebook, on YouTube, and other places, and help the activists like us and other people to show what's really going on inside Syria. But media-wise, the problem, even with satellite TV channels, is they're not very. You have to look at the two sides. The regime is, of course, I mean, dictatorship. It's horrible. They use their media just to give their side of the story. They don't allow the foreign media to come in. So, for example, I told them from the beginning, if you're really saying they are Islamists and fighters, why don't you let the foreign media come in? The Western media. I'm sure they would report on what's really happening on the ground. Because a lot of people in the beginning were not even believing that there were armed people on the ground in Syria. But again, it's the mentality of a dictatorship. No, we keep everybody abroad, we keep everybody away. But on the other hand, you have a lot of other people who started taking advantage of the situation, like, for example, Al Arabiya, Al Jazeera, Al Hayat. The other problem we have on the other side is most Arab media, 90% of the Arab media is owned by the Saudis and the Qataris and the Kuwaitis. Al Arabiya is owned by Saudi Arabia. I mean, they want democracy in Syria. It's strange. Saudi Arabia is I don't think that it has anything to do with democracy. A woman can't drive. A woman doesn't have any rights. She can't. I mean, they have huge problems. And they talk about corruption. Al Arabiya is owned by King Fahd's brother-in-law, the late king of Saudi Arabia's brother-in-law, Al Ibrahimi, and they were the most corrupt people in Saudi Arabia. They're exactly like the Makhlouf family in Syria, which are Bashar's cousins from his mother's side. They own the NBC TV channels. They own all the television channels. The Al Hayat newspaper is owned by Khalid bin Sultan. Again, Prince Khalid is Saudi Arabia. Al-Sharq al-Awsat by Al-Walid bin Talal. Al Jazeera by the Qatari government. So you see, so it's all one-sided. All the Arab media, again, is one-sided. This is why it was very important for the government to allow the Western media to go in. Okay, if you have problem with Arab media, you have problem, but you should allow the Western media to go in, because Western media will tell, they're very, they have honesty, and they will tell what they really see on the ground. And we wouldn't have to have this incident, with this unfortunate incidents with what happened, in Homs with, Mary Colvin and Mr. Kolchak. It was very, very upsetting and very sad.
That is certainly something we can all agree on. Yeah. Well, on that note, I've been given the signal. We're going to take a break now.
Yes.
Ribal Al Assad, thank you for your
Thank you very
insights
much.
and your observations. Thank you.